Good morning and welcome to Coffee Talk. This is going to be a really great one because we've got Faith Borkowsky of High Five Literacy and the author of, and I'm going to try to center it the best I can, Failing Students or Failing Schools, A Parent's Guide to Reading, Instruction, and Intervention. And I'm so thrilled that we have Faith here with us today because you want to talk about an indomitable woman and an amazing proponent for literacy and dyslexia. It's Faith. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We love having you. I interviewed you just a little bit over a year ago, and that was just so much fun. And we connected then. And I love the idea that we've got Coffee Talk up and running. I did a little bit of a live about it yesterday about how I had the idea last October. Enid had the idea at about the same time. And what I love about the idea of Coffee Talk was I shared it with a bunch of people at that time. And I love how different people in different groups have really embraced the idea of Coffee Talk, of just through various memes, through various notes, et cetera. It's all about supporting the community and sharing the love and just doing everything that we can to be of service to the parents. And that's just, it warms my heart so much. I think it's absolutely amazing.
Well, I have my mug.
I love your mug.
Yes. Thank you, Allie, my future daughter-in-law, got this to me. So happy to use it.
Is it a coincidence that it says high five? Have it made. Sorry,
we both talked at the same time because high five. So yeah, high five?
Yeah, that's my business name.
Right. Did she have it made for you, or did she happen to find one?
I think she just found it, but it was so thoughtful, and it stays in my office. But now I'm actually using it. So thank you, Allie.
I love it. So one of the things we really wanted to talk about today with you, because you're so good at breaking things down for parents in the way that they can really understand, is to talk about the difference between balanced literacy and what people are now calling structured literacy. It's had a few different names over the last few years. The International Dyslexia Association issued a press release. I can't remember the exact date when they decided to adopt the name structured literacy. Mm-hmm. But in the kinds of questions that we get and what we do, here at the Dyslexia Initiative, we do not support balanced literacy at all. It's one of the methodologies that we're not going to get behind. But we wanted to just talk about it today and talk about the difference between, have you explain to parents really what is balanced literacy? What is structured literacy? Why are they different? And why is one better than the other?
All right. So in order to get started, I'm going to start further back than both of those names. And I'm going to start with whole language. Yes. Because when I first entered into teaching, that was the term used when I was in college and when I started working. The thinking was, if you surround children with good books, that they will just pick up reading because they'll love reading. Mm-hmm. And we really were not talking about how children learn to read. It was just expected, if you give them the right books and they are read to, that they will learn to read. Now, here I am, I finished college, I was 21 years old. If somebody is telling me that basically that's how kids learn to read, I believed it. I had a degree in this, and it was a special ed and elementary degree. I dual majored, and that was taught in both programs. Well, I started teaching in 1986, and I mentioned this in my book, where they were pulling off these sound cards from the walls when I started. They were sound cards with a program called Open Court, which was a basal reading program, but it had a very strong phonics component. And it was like sound like ba-ba beating heart to get the book sound. And I didn't know from this program, but I saw the cards being removed. And I was kind of happy. Good. Out with the old, in with the new. What did I know? Then I saw that what I thought was true was not true, because children were not picking it up. Some did, but many did not. And I just want to say I started teaching in what was known as a very good district in Brooklyn, New York. It was a neighborhood where solid middle class to upper middle class neighborhood. So it wasn't a poverty issue. There really were many children not reading. And I started teaching as a third grade teacher. So I thought to myself, well, what's going on down there in first and second grade? What are these teachers doing or not doing? Because, of course, I was young and stupid. And that's basically, what I was wondering, what's happening in the younger grades? Well, I ended up getting a master's in reading. And I learned more of the same in the master's in reading. So I was really good at genre studies, author studies. I could, bounce off a number of children's books, but I really did not know how to help those hardcore cases. So now I have master's in reading, degree in elementary ed, special ed, and I still don't feel confident. I asked other people, for advice. I was still given the same advice. Well, you just have to give them the right books to be able to get them to read. So I was using all my Scholastic book order money to make sure I filled my room with books. The walls were filled with words. I had the word walls. I had the book bins. I had it all. And yet I felt incompetent. And, the ones who were learning to read would have learned to read if they were taught in the closet. It had nothing to really do with me.
So true.
And I really could not understand how other people didn't feel the same way. It was mostly like those kids or the parents aren't reading to them. I mean, this would be talk in the lunchroom. Well, and that's honest. It would be, well, those kids, what are you going to do? You could only do so much. There was no one taking responsibility, really. So anyhow, this was the whole language movement. And then by the 1990s, we started to see some changes with scientifically based reading research, SBRR. And I started to read up on this. And I was in a bookstore, and I started to teach in 1986. And now we're getting into 2000, late 90s, and then up to 2000 when NCLB first came out. Mm-hmm. So I was already teaching a while already, doing the same things, frustrated. That's what I knew. And then I read a book, and I mentioned this in my book, that changed my life. And it was written by a woman named Diane McGinnis. And it's Why Children Can't Read and What You Can Do About It. And I was in a bookstore on Long Island in book review, and the book kind of fell into my lap. It was just crazy. But I felt it was this message, and I opened it up, and I just started reading it, and it made so much sense to me. And that was it. I read that book cover to cover. And that's when I decided I'm going to go get trained. I want to learn what this is all about. And it was all based on what you would call linguistic phonics, speech to print. And then I started to learn about what we know as OG, Orton Gillingham. So I went for training in OG, which is more print to speech. So it's just how you approach it. Guess what? Both ways work. After doing both, they both work. But what's the key in both of those? Structure. And I think although IDA started off more saying Orton Gillingham, I think the idea was that we need explicit, structured instruction. That's the structure. And so the term changed, but the approach of trying to teach children from bottom up, simple to complex, using explicit instruction. In other words, telling children, here are the letters. This is how we map those letters to the sounds and words. Graphemes are the letters, phonemes are those individual sounds. We're not leaving it to chance. We're not practicing discovery learning, or as Pamela Snow would say, choose your own adventure learning, which is how I was trained.
I love it.
So I think that kind of puts it into perspective of whole language to then structured. But now where did the balance part come in? How did we get there? So balanced really is whole language, but it was a nod to phonics. So once all this research came out about the importance of phonemic awareness and phonics and having what we call the 5 pillars of literacy, phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, comprehension, which I don't love because reading comprehension is really based on all the other pieces.
Thank you again.
And language and motivation and those types of things. But it's based on the pillars of literacy. So, and that was important. That's what the science shows. We need everything. But how we need it is not really balanced equally. We need more of certain of those things in the early grades than other things. We need in K-2, even pre-K-2, more about sounds, more about letter recognition, more about how to push those sounds together to read words, not to start introducing comprehension strategies before they could actually read words.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Thank you.
I have to say, you are saying so many things that I think are confusing, and you are clarifying them so beautifully. And explicit teaching is so important, and the comprehension piece you just brought up is so important. I think it's something we need to continue to keep talking about because there are 2 areas that I think people are, there's some confusion around those areas. So when you say these things with, so much, background behind it and expertise, it's just so refreshing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, and continue.
It is. And I want to add too that, as a parent with a child in special education, because he's dyslexic, and trying to navigate the individualized education plan and the types of goals that they write over time, it's sitting there looking at them going, why are we focusing on this? This will come. We need to be focusing on this over here. I don't,
Well, they focus on comprehension because it's easy. Because you can write comprehension goals easily. You can say the child will answer WH questions. It's very kind of, abstract. It's not very measurable, a lot of the comprehension goals they come up with. And so one of the things that you just brought up, Faith, that's so important is that there's the K1-2 skills. You can't ignore those in goals. So you can't, these kids are getting to 5th grade and they've ignored them, and they aren't going back and working on those K1-2 skills. And so, so that's one of those things, but you'll see tons of reading comprehension goals, and they're not working on those fundamental skills as you're talking about. And so of course we're going to see difficulty in comprehension. It's kind of not fair to the kid.
Not at all. And it makes sense when you think about it. You build a house and you put money into a house. You could put Anderson windows into a house, a new roof. But if there's a crack in the foundation, you have to fix the foundation. You cannot just move ahead and think that this is going to just trickle down, and they're just going to pick up these basic skills without addressing them. So you have to always go back to the basics in every area. My brother-in-law is a karate teacher. I don't think that you would ever start as a black belt without foundation. If you were on the soccer field, do the children not practice how to move a ball first, or are they just expected to get on a field and just know what to do? It's bizarre. When you compare this to anything else, it's just sensible. Just doesn't, no one would ever expect that, but yet reading is looked at as something that's natural. So that's part of the reason that this has gone as far as it has, because we think, like talking, reading is natural. So if we just surround them with books, they'll pick it up the same way you pick up how to walk and talk. Obviously, unless there is some type of other difficulty, we're built to be able to do those things. But no, we're not built to be able to read. This was a man-made structure. So, and we have to address it that way, teaching from the bottom up.
And that's, so I can't remember who said this. It was a few months ago that I heard this. Gosh, I wish I could remember specifically who said it, because I'd love to give them credit for it. But I found it to be a very profound statement of, you have a university environment, you have all of these colleges on a university, right? So you have science groups, neuroscientists, regular scientists, everybody there on the campus conducting all kinds of research. You have all of this research for reading and how the brain takes in reading, how everything comes together happening on university campuses. But at the same time, you have the College of Education not listening.
Absolutely. Yes. They live in their own silo. And that's what it is. But then again, classrooms are isolating too. After years of working in classrooms, you shut your door and you don't know what's going on in someone else's room. So until I became a coach, where I was actually going into classrooms to do training and do embedded professional development, I had no idea what was going on. And professionally, you keep this to yourself because there is this privacy issue. You don't run to a principal and say, well, you know what she's doing? So you are supposed to be able to have this relationship with teachers so they can trust you, and where they open the door. And it for some, it was very hard to get through the door because they didn't want you to see what they were doing. But then when you do see, you realize that even though the science is there, not everyone embraces it. Once that door closes, all bets are off. You really don't know what's happening. So when I became involved as a coach with Reading First, I was a regional coach. I was learning everything I could about structured literacy. And I already knew and practiced it myself. But then I had to go into classrooms and show people, and some people embraced it right away. They loved it. And others wanted to stay with what they knew, what was comfortable. And many people resist change. So it's hard.
Well, because
around.
I was going to say, Faith, sorry. It's in education, the pendulum swings back and forth, and
correct.
And you throw the baby out with the bathwater before something works. And so a lot of why I think teachers get kind of like, I don't know about that, is because it's always something new. And just when you think something's about to work, they're like, no, we're going to do this now. It's going to be balanced literacy now. So, I mean, that I think contributes a lot to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. When you said the term throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I heard that so often. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. this baby needed to drown.
Right.
This is a baby that needed to drown. We're so worried about giving something up
Right.
that they
That is
wanted
so
to try to balance everything. And
Right.
in balancing it, we watered down the important parts that did not work for a lot of children, which also leads me to the idea of what we're talking about here. This is good for all children. This is not about a child with dyslexia. And that's why I did not put that in the title of my book. Not that I'm against that. As a matter of fact, the new books that I came out with, I did put it in to have that word, language literacy and dyslexia. But a lot of parents don't want to see it that way.
Right.
They don't understand what this is about.
Right.
It's about curriculum and training, teacher training and poor choices. It is not about a teacher not being a good teacher. When I say dysteachia, I was a dysteacher. And I think I said that to you last time. I was a dysteacher. If you don't know, you're doing a disservice to children.
Right.
But it's not that you mean to hurt children. We
Yeah.
just didn't know. And so we are not being trained properly. And the curriculum we're given is based on this balance where we're asking kids to use context to guess at words instead of read words.
Well, can I say something about that? Because you talk a lot about that, and I talk a lot about that. And when we work with our students, because they've been trained, so we have these stealth kids who are so good at figuring things out. And so they teach them how to figure things out or to use these cues to guess and to figure things out. So they teach them to look at context, they teach them to look at pictures. And then when we get them, we have to break them of all of the bad habits of guessing, because the bad habits of guessing now are one of the biggest problems, more than the fact that their foundation is shaky. That's one of the problems, but we also have to break them of all the bad habits. So it's beyond just not a good, effective strategy. It really actually is detrimental sometimes to their progress.
It is detrimental. So we're teaching children, and I didn't come up with this myself, but we're teaching children to read like poor readers would read. Basically, that's what a poor reader does, reaches for context, can't read the words. So the child is trying to pull a lifeline. Let me look at a picture. Let me use that to help. Let me use context. Let me guess. But that's one thing for a child to try to reach. It's another thing to teach those as strategies. And that's what's amazing. So we have kids who might not have struggled actually reading like poor readers read. And then you have the kids who have these genetic markers, the dyslexia, and we are really creating a problem. We're exacerbating a problem that is there already instead of making it better. We're making it worse. Dyslexia can be prevented, at the very least mitigated, where you could definitely work with the few kids who might have those really severe issues where they're the resistors, and not have all these kids in intervention. When you have over 60% of children in intervention, this is not a dyslexia problem. No. This is a teacher training and curriculum problem. So, and that's what we have to get across. If we don't change Gen Ed, we will always have a problem.
Agree.
We will always be having people having to fight with a system. And then it's the luck of the draw. Well, you were trained. Oh, I want that teacher. You weren't trained. It's a setback. From year to year, it could just be, who knows what can happen from year to year. But if we start with Gen Ed, it is a Gen Ed issue. Reading First, when I started working with Reading First, it was a general education issue. Dyslexia shouldn't be relegated to special ed. That's where it is. It's someone else's problem, someone else's child, until, of course, it's your own. Then it becomes a different story altogether.
So true.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Ashley, really quickly, you can talk about the guessing thing, because can I share that about your son?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Her son is at a point right now where the only thing getting in his way is his own doubt and his own compensatory strategies that they gave him. So, or that he developed himself to get through what they hadn't given, what they hadn't supported him with for the foundation. So as a mom, I mean, you're seeing that and you're dealing with that with the school district right now.
I am. And, I love that Faith brought up the term strategies, because that's always been such a thorn in my side. He's in his last year of elementary school, but every single year I've had teachers look at me and go, well, if he would just follow his strategies. And I'm going, can you tell me what the strategies are? Oh, well, he knows what they are. He's 7, 8, 9, 10. I don't care that he knows what they are. I want you to tell me what the strategies are. Nobody's ever told me. It's like I don't have permission to be told what the strategies are or something. And I find that very frustrating and annoying, but I'm sure in the last couple of years, it's because of what I do and how public I am and how loudly I'm screaming against all of this. But even this year, it's all about applying his reading strategies. And I can't tell you how many times I've asked in the face, until I'm blue in the face, just tell me what the strategies are. Because I want to know.
I'll tell you, skip the dog, just skip the words.
Yeah.
Get your mouth ready.
Right.
Yeah.
And after all that we've done for private remediation, he's been in private tutoring since end of March 2016 with no break. He's done Linda Mood Bell. He's done the Nyhouse method. We will finish the initial Nyhouse program in May of 2020. And I'm sitting here going, I don't want y'all teaching. I don't want you contradicting what we're paying money for out of our own individual pockets for him to be instructed on, and then him show up in a classroom and you go, oh, don't do that, do this instead.
Yeah. This happens with all my clients. I have this conversation with them all the time where the child is given the effective way of looking at a word. We say the sounds, we read through a word, we don't read around words, and then they're being told something else. I say, use your finger to read underneath the line of print. They're being told, no, don't use your finger, it's babyish. And it's so ridiculous. So we're always worried about that. But this kind of goes back to, I joined with a couple of parent advocates on Long Island. Hi, Danielle Brooks. Hi, Maria Licata, if you're out there. Because we really do care about kids, honestly, and we get fed up with this. So we formed a group called Building Readers Long Island and came up with a Facebook page. And one of the things we want to do is to get this message out there that it's really about how children are taught in the first place, and to make parents aware that this problem even exists. And one of the little breakout sessions I did was, it's not the program, it's the process. Because what I see going on, there's a lot of demanding, I want Wilson.
Yes.
I want Wilson. I want Wilson. I want Wilson. I'm Wilson certified. I'm glad you want Wilson. Great.
But you're actually Wilson certified. You're not 3-day trained. I'm sorry. I just wanted to throw that.
I'm certified. I'm certified.
No. And the reason why I'm saying that is because districts are training teachers in a 3-day Wilson training, expecting that to be enough. So what I'm saying is you're actually certified, and yet these districts are offering Wilson, and the parents don't realize that these teachers are not certified. They have a minimal training, and even Wilson says it's not enough. But I see district after district after district say, our teachers are Wilson trained after 3 days. And as a Wilson certified person, that is not, that 3 days is not sufficient.
I'm going to even let you in on a little secret.
Thank you.
Even
It's very
okay, even the certification isn't enough, because what I'm seeing, there are people who are Wilson certified, and this is not to knock any person, but this is what I hear. And there's this misunderstanding about what they need. So in other words, you know, they're okay with this idea of guided reading in addition to Wilson.
Right.
And again, I think the message is muddied by also Wilson, to be honest, because it's the same way they get foundations into a school district. Foundations is a phonics program that's meant for gen ed to prevent problems. And it's really said that, well, it's a good supplement. So districts, in all fairness to administrators in a district, if they don't know, they think, I got this covered. I got foundations. So you can't say we don't teach phonics. We teach phonics, right? The problem is that unless you understand the bigger picture, the reading process, you're going to think, okay, I do this. It's okay to then mix it up. Again, always wanting to go back to balancing with this balanced literacy. We have phonics. Well, we're going to balance this. The guided reading books will set these kids back, because what are they based on? They're based on all the strategies that we talked about,
right?
The guessing, the context. And so now you have a new reader, or someone who's just now a fragile reader, and they're getting these mixed messages. Do I use my phonics skills?
Right.
Or do I do what they're telling me to do? And it is very confusing. They're children, and how are they supposed to know what to use when?
Right.
So it really requires a lot of understanding. It's not about opening a box and just starting teaching, because there's more to it. It's a broader understanding about how kids learn, understanding how the brain works, how we really learn. Then you would be making better decisions. And that's why we have these poor decisions being made. I just saw a post in a group where something like that was mentioned, and I was like, oh, that's what I was going to be saying today.
Well, and on that note, can you clarify the three terms that are really confusing people right now, because they think they're three different things, and that is the science of reading, structured literacy, and OG. So I've had people ask me, I've had even board members ask me, should we get the science of reading or structured literacy or OG? And it's kind of like what you're saying right now, is it's about understanding the whole big picture, and that all three of them, but I know you can say it so eloquently, so.
Thank you. Well, that's really why the books were written in the first place. Failing students or failing schools was written to make this easy enough for anyone to pick up and understand.
And it is, and I love it. It's one of my favorite books.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very good research.
And I could just say that, are there books that are more detailed than my book about everything that's in the science of reading? Absolutely. I didn't write it for those people. I wrote it for someone who would look at Mark Seidenberg's book and just balk, because it's just too heavy, too much. And that is probably one of my favorite books. So I love you, Mark Seidenberg. This is nothing against you. But the first third of that book is heavy.
Yeah,
really heavy.
I'm still stuck in the first third of the book, because I've read Proust right before his. And I shouldn't have done that. That was bad planning on my part, because I was so worn out from Proust. And then I started Seidenberg's book. I'm just like, I just can't keep going.
Yes.
Well, it is also confusing, Faith, and what you do is so wonderful, because we really just need to make sense of it all, because there's so many terms and they change, and yet sometimes they're saying the same thing, and so that's why
Yes, saying
Yes.
the same thing.
And that's what you're able to what you do in your book so beautifully is you help to sort of make sense of just all of this stuff coming at parents when they're first starting the process. And how do I make sense of these terms? And do they mean the same thing? Are they very different?
And I want to add one in there because I know I see a lot of different groups throw this term out too. Synthetic phonics.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So that is huge in the UK.
Right.
And if you really think about the word synthetic, it really means to synthesize, to bring together sounds. So if you're looking through a word, those letters are code for all the sounds. If you know the letter sound correspondences, grapheme phoneme correspondences, if you go across and blend, you will be able to read a word. That's synthetic phonics. That's all it is. Analytic is really going in the other direction. You are analyzing and going to break this down. So the whole is there, and you're trying to figure out the parts based on other things you know about words. So if you know the word rain, then hopefully you'll know brain, and then train, just to give you an example. You are making connections, but you don't bring it down to AI shows the A sound. So that's analytic. Most of what we see in guided reading is pulling phonics from a book that exists and on the spot trying to teach a phonics concept, but that doesn't have the same repetition necessarily, the same in-depth understanding of how words work. It's this on-the-spot teaching. So many teachers will feel like, well, I cover phonics. Yeah, kind of, but phonics is a loose word here. It can mean a lot of different things. So when we're talking about the science, it means that there is evidence behind it, scientifically based reading research, not just research. Anybody could research something.
Yeah.
We could research, anything we want. That doesn't mean there's evidence behind what we, research. So it is the science of reading means that it was peer reviewed. It's in a journal. It was studied appropriately with the right control groups, without the control group knowing they're a control group. Thank you, Steve Dykstra, if you're watching. So, giving shout outs to people who I really find helpful along the way. Mm-hmm. But, because that's not necessarily my forte. He could say it differently, but that's the idea, that there is a science to this, that everything about reading is based on what we know evidence shows us to be true. Not that it's my opinion. It's not all about touchy-feely. Well, I like doing that. I like having circles with books and book discussions. Who doesn't? But they first have to be able to read the words there, right? So then you have structured literacy. And as I said to you before, it just means that we're not going to do this in a loosey-goosey way. We are going to, whatever we're teaching, whether it's phonics or whether we're teaching anything about reading, that there is a way that builds on a prior understanding of how words work. So we build up simple to complex. There's an easy structure. Therefore, you could see when kids are falling through the cracks. Mm-hmm. It's easy enough. Oh, we taught that, but you know what? This kid is not getting this piece. With levels, you don't know what it is that they don't know. We assume they have a lot more than they do because they're using pictures and context. So that's structured, where it's explicit. I'm telling you exactly how letters match up with sounds, how to blend left to right. We are doing this systematically. There is some understanding that it's cumulative. We build on other skills and we keep bringing them back. We do diagnostic teaching. It's not like we teach something and we don't check. We're always checking, whether it's informal or formal types of assessments. And then we have the multisensory piece, multisensory instruction. Nothing wrong with bringing in, visual and, kinesthetic. The problem is it sometimes becomes all about making something multisensory.
Exactly.
Let's use shaving cream and let's use sand. And that's okay, especially for very little kids, to give them the feeling of how you form a letter.
Right.
But that is not what we really mean. We mean as we read the word out loud, we're saying the sounds, we are looking, we're saying the sounds. We could be manipulating some letter tiles. It doesn't even have to be that. It could be just writing as you say the sound, as simple as that. That's multisensory.
Right.
So that's all part of this approach. As far as multisensory, we don't have the same research backing that, although I love multisensory, but it's really about the explicit instruction piece. That's the most important part, letting kids in on the secret.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm sure you get kids all the time saying to you, why didn't somebody else teach it to me like this?
All the time.
Like, on a regular basis. It makes so much sense to them, and thank you for saying that about the multisensory too, because another thing I think that's really important to bring up with that is that if you're not a visual learner, then visual supports may not help you. And so things like visualizing, verbalizing, I love it. It's a Linda Mood-Bell program. It's fantastic. But not all kids benefit from it because not all kids are visual. So when they put all the kids on the same program because they say, oh, this helps, this is a visual thing, I think it's just really important that when we're using multisensory, that we're using the right multisensory for that kid too. So.
Right. And, the whole learning styles theory is also bogus too. So, the whole thing about this types of learners, putting them into a box like that, we don't have the research to back that either. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the more we use all our senses together, the more it strengthens our understanding. But going back to what you said about a specific program, I love VV too, visualizing and verbalizing. And for some, it works very well. That goes back to knowing your student.
Right.
If you only learn a program, you are not in the position to make that judgment. You're going to try to fit kids into a program because that's what you know, rather than choose a program because you have a broad understanding of reading. We're doing it the opposite way. Mm-hmm. Right. And so then OG, when you mentioned Orton Gillingham, what exactly is that? That's really based on two people who came up with the idea that we need to make reading explicit, structured, multisensory, blah, blah, blah. And so it's just the name of what we use, Samuel Orton, Anna Gillingham. And it's been synonymous with that type of teaching. But I believe the whole name structured literacy kind of is more of an umbrella term where everything should be taught explicitly and in a structured way. So again, instead of just asking, oh, I want OG, everybody wants OG. Well, some kids don't need OG. They really don't need OG. But we hear that that's what is helpful, so we jump all over it. But if we knew that, let's say, a kid struggled with phonemic awareness and decoding, well, then we don't have to worry about a program. We know what they need. I can have any program taken away from me, and I'll still be able to teach a kid to read in the closet.
Well,
then glue, I could teach a kid to read. I don't need a program.
Yeah, and they're taking kids out of their electives in middle school and putting them into like a Barton class, which I love Barton. But what I'm saying is they don't need a whole class. They don't need to be taken out of something they love and put in a class where they're getting a tutoring program when they just need segmentation. So in some respects, somebody might think, oh, it's an OG program, it's Spartan, which is fabulous. I'm going to put my kid in there when they don't need that level of intervention. So it's so important that you bring that up.
Right. I mean, for some kids, it clicks immediately.
Exactly.
And then you could say, well, this kid was just an instructional casualty.
Mm-hmm.
For others, it takes a lot longer. And then you could say, well, wait a minute. Even if the kid was taught with the best instruction from the start, yeah, this kid would probably still need extra help, but we wouldn't have these types of numbers. No way. That's why it really goes back to fixing the foundation. What goes on tier 1, pre-KK 1 and 2, making it understood that these kids need a strong foundation in phonemic awareness, obviously language skills, not pushing kids into books because we want to jump to meaning before they could even read what's on the page.
Right.
Understanding that would change the course of all these other problems.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so much so. Yeah, perfect. I mean, it's so great that you say that, because I think we miss the importance of the K2 period of time and really making sure that there's an emphasis on that then.
So there's an interesting thing that happened in Portland for the IDA conference that just happened up there. Several people walked away from Portland saying we shouldn't be calling it structured literacy. We should be calling it structured language and literacy.
But
so, I mean, that's for you to comment on.
Well, the reason why why do we have to keep changing the name? Because what Faith is saying, when that is sort of an umbrella of it all, if we understand what structured literacy is, we would understand that language would be included in that.
Correct.
So,
I think that's specifically the issue.
Sorry. So
no. I think that's specifically the issue is the people that are saying that are those that are afraid that people who don't really understand it, like you and I have been talking about, Enid, everybody's been saying the science of reading, the science of reading, the science of reading. How easy is it going to be for people to start saying, oh, we're doing the science of reading when you're not doing the science of reading? The fear that it could become something that, for lack of a better term, could be bastardized back into balanced literacy or something like that. Hi. Soccer game's over. But so these were educators specifically they're talking about it simply because they're afraid that people are going to say, yes, we're doing structured literacy, but they're not doing structured literacy. And they're getting these kids from a remediation point of view into a structured literacy program when they don't have the language foundations.
Okay, now that it all makes sense to me, but it, as you said, Enid, it adds another layer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see the point, but I get what they're saying.
Exactly.
Reading is all based on language. Everything about reading is based on language. That's why in my new books, I even put in the title, if only I would have known what I would have wanted to hear, and I'm saying this as a general term, about language, literacy, and dyslexia. So there was the pediatrician's book, the pre-K teacher book, and now the librarian book is coming out. But I purposely put language, literacy, dyslexia in, so there's no misunderstanding. Everything starts at birth with language.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the conversation that we would hope pediatricians have with their parents, that it's all based on language. What are you seeing in terms of their language development? If there are red flags, be aware of this. And of course, the schools will have to eventually listen if enough people going through the back door start talking. That's my whole idea in this. I've tried going through the front door. I've been in lots of schools going through the front door, going into classrooms, thinking, because I was naive, that would be enough. But by doing this for a long time, I realized the back door is the way. Parents are the back door.
Mm-hmm.
Going through the front door, we hope the Reading League, shout out to the Reading League, they're awesome. When we know better, we do better. I really believe that for many people that's true, but others, you could know better, and I've seen it, I'm not making this up, where it's just easier to ignore. And I'd rather just keep doing what I'm doing. But if parents are aware that, guess what? Over 60% of the kids are not reading at a proficient level. It's not just a dyslexia problem. This is a curriculum problem. And the way you get more people on your side is to involve people who are taxpayers. We're all taxpayers. It's not just those people. We're all taxpayers. We want our schools to function appropriately. And so I really believe this message needs to get out to a wider audience.
And if people are confused about the name of what it is, then they're not going to be able to get the message out clearly to the people who need to hear it. So I feel like all of the confusion about the names is confusing parents to a point where they're not able to act, effectively advocate for their child because they're not even sure what they're supposed to be asking for. So I so thank you for this clarification today, Faith, because I know that, I'm in the field and I get confused sometimes, like, wait, what is structured? And then if you added another thing to the name, I'm really good, and I'm in it on a regular basis. So yeah, I think it's so important that as a group of people trying to make change, that we can somehow come to some sort of understanding of what the term is we're looking for.
Yeah, and there are so many of these little acronyms, and in education, it's almost, you need a dictionary just to know all the different little ways to say things, whether it's, National Reading Panel, or so it's the NRP or No Child Left Behind, NCL, it's just, there are millions of these, and it's intimidating. So my goal is to take that all away. Let's have some coffee. I'm from New York. I'm a Brooklyn girl. This is the way it is. This is how Brooklyn girls talk to each other.
I love it.
Simple English, simple language. And that's what my goal is, really, to make it simple enough to understand.
Yeah.
So how is it simple to get your book? Sorry, I totally interrupted you, but are you?
So I'm on Amazon.
Okay.
And I have, even if you just Google my name, it'll come up, or go on Amazon, put my name in, you'll see it. This was the book we were just talking about, right? Failing Students or Failing Schools, a parent's guide to reading instruction and intervention. And these are 2 books now. There's going to be a third that is written really for parents just, getting an understanding now while their children are young. So Christmas is coming, Hanukkah's coming. This is what you need to give to a parent with a young child, just starting out, so they could start recognizing what to look for before they are already entrenched in a dysfunctional system.
Right.
And my girlfriend from Brooklyn, hey, Cheryl Lynn, Rosenstock Marcus is the illustrator. I actually had a professional graphic artist help me with this because I wanted it to be so friendly. I did it in a play format so that it would just be almost like an easy kids book that you're opening up. Try to make it as simple as possible, still, of course, based on what we know to be true and real. But it's been a great time with her because this is a childhood friend and we had a chance to collaborate and we are having a blast. And she is so in. It's fabulous. So a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So the thing I was going to say earlier is you said a term to me last October that I have used in probably every conversation I've had since, which was edge battle.
Yep.
I love that term. It's such an appropriate term. So when you were talking about acronyms and calling things different things, different ways, it's that term instantly popped into my head. And I was like, we need to talk about edubabble, and because I need to give you credit for that because I use it all the time.
Babble, that's a good one.
It really is a bunch of edubabble. I can't stand it. Honestly, I'm in that world and I cannot stand it.
Yeah,
It's
me
just
too.
really just say it simply. Come on.
Yeah.
What is this nonsense? But I almost think some of it's designed to skirt the issue. I think sometimes it's by design. I really mean it. I hate to be like that. But what is this? Just say it like it is.
Right.
Why does it have to be so confusing? It shouldn't have to be so confusing.
No,
but it sounds, like you're more educated. So.
Yes, it's definitely a shaming tactic. Fortunately, it's not a shaming tactic that's ever worked on me, but I know that it works on many, and I can't stand it. I wish that they just wouldn't do it. I remember the first time a teacher said automaticity to me, and I went, automa what?
Yeah.
I was like, that can't possibly be a real word. That's just not even remotely feasible.
Yes. So basically, that is what we shoot for in all the foundational skills.
Right.
We want it to be automatic, right? Let's just say it like that. When you see letters, you automatically connect it to a sound or possibly multiple sounds. When you learn the code, you'll realize that not everything is this neat one-to-one match. But once you learn it, you want that to be the automatic response. So when you look at a word, you could automatically read the word without thinking about it. Very different from teaching it as a whole, as a sight word. So that word has multiple meanings as well. Where there are kids going into kindergarten and parents are getting a summer list of words when they enter kindergarten. Ridiculous. They don't even understand how letters and sounds work. And they're being handed a list saying, okay, your child should know this entering kindergarten. Yeah. I kid you not.
They should be playing.
They should be playing. Yes, they should be playing. And when they do finally do some work with letters and sounds, they should be taught. Exactly. So I am all for play, all about play. There's not enough of it. I can't stand how kids are put on computers from birth, and iPads and iPods and everything, iPhones. It's enough. They need to be able to play and move their bodies and create things. I'm all for that. Yeah. And that's appropriate. But when they are taught to read, they really should be taught. It shouldn't be just play where they're just being exposed. That's very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, when they enter kindergarten, they should be playing. So yes, because they should be playing.
I'm playing for school too.
You're right.
No, exactly. I play. Right. We all play.
Yeah, no, but to bring up that, I am not a fan of Phonics for that reason, because they try to make it too fun and they're not explicit enough. And so the kids get confused. So that's I'm just that's just one of those programs where the idea was fun and playful, but it has never worked for my students.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's what you have to see, what works for you. If you notice, I never push a program on my business page. Right. I just don't. I never will say, I'll say if I've used something, if I liked something, yes, but it's not about the program. No. It's about understanding how kids learn. It's really about understanding how the brain works, how kids learn to read. And then it doesn't matter what you use. If you understand the progression of skills required, you'll understand then what to do. And even if the school decides on a whim, we're going to get rid of this and put this in, you will still know how to fill in gaps. Right. So that's what I think is very important. We need to change teacher education, and we need to stop trusting that if we open a book or a box, the answer is going to just pop out and everything's going to be there. We have to use our brains a little and think and be intuitive about understanding what needs to be changed. Which it's very hard to teach someone else that, but I'm going to try. That's my next goal, is to, by the summer, I'm looking to start training people, parents and teachers, something more than a program, taking my experience and trying to break it down for other people so they know how to look at kids differently.
That's amazing.
I love it because, like, it's not rocket science.
Oh, I didn't hear you.
Sorry, yeah.
What'd you say?
I didn't.
I just said it's not rocket science. Sorry, and so that's what you're saying too. It's not rocket science what you do, as long as you understand the developmental sequence. Sorry, go ahead, Ashley.
No,
Yes,
the same thing. I was saying the same thing.
Oh, okay.
And I love Louisa Motz's work and about reading is rocket science. Yes, because there is a science to it. And I think that is the rocket science, the science. But guess what? Using what we know now isn't that difficult.
Right.
If you know, let's start from the beginning. What's difficult is when, like you said, both of you said, what your son is up against, when he's getting the science and then it's being torn apart, knowing or unknowingly. But, that's what's hard. That you know what works, your child could be doing well, and then all of a sudden they're getting another message and they don't know who to listen to. They're kids.
Right.
Very hard.
It is. It is very hard. So we've done twice the time that I thought that we were going to do, but
we're going to have Faith on again and again and again.
I know, definitely. So do you have any final thoughts, either of you, before we wrap up?
I want to say one thing really quickly, Faith, when you brought up earlier about whole language and how it was the perception was out there that, oh, parents just need to read more and there needs to be more books. The amount of guilt that put on parents and does put on parents when they go to these meetings. And to this day, people will sit across, a lot of times it's principals, I have to admit, because I mean, teachers usually know better, but will sit across from a parent and say things like, well, you just need to read to them more. Do you read to them at home? And the amount of guilt that makes, I know, right, makes a parent feel. So when you brought that up, I thought that was so important that you brought up how that's not effective, because not only is it not effective when we say that to parents, you just need to do more. You just need to, when they need that foundation, those foundational skills, it's just, it's so heartbreaking for a parent to have to.
And I'm going to throw in there, because only one person has had the guts to say that to me once. I read to my son when he was still in the womb. I read to him as soon as he was born. I read to him every single day. I read multiple books a day. I mean, it was a profound part of his very early years. He's about to turn 11. I still read to him. Not every day. There's issues around that, but it's something that he still very much enjoys me doing, and I still very much enjoy doing for him. His language has always been through the roof. His oral vocabulary is significantly advanced for his age. Always has been. Yet he's dyslexic. Sorry, reading to your kid isn't going to stop the dyslexia.
And filling your home with books will not stop it either.
Nope.
So you could line the walls with books.
I can take a picture of all the books we have upstairs and send it to you. I mean, there's hundreds.
I believe you. I believe you. And, reading aloud was a big part of what we did. My husband was equally involved as far as reading aloud to the kids. He would take one, I would take the other. We would switch so that they would get both of us. And so they always had a male reader too, that it wasn't just a woman's thing. He was very involved. So we always did the read alouds. And I really, I'm all for reading aloud. This is not about not reading aloud to your child.
Right.
that message must be there to read aloud to your child. So by talking about this, phonics and phonemic awareness and structure, that does not negate the importance of reading aloud to children. So I just want to put that out there. But that's not going to do it for some kids. It's not about that. It's about teaching them how to read. And that's another organization I want to mention too. I'm going to plug it. Yeah. Teach My Kid to Read. Hi, Marion, if you're out there. She's the executive director of the nonprofit Teach My Kid to Read. So if there are parents out there and you want to do something about what's going on, please visit Teach My Kid to Read. There's going to be Giving Tuesday. Think about Teach My Kid to Read along with Dyslexia Initiative. And because what we're doing right now is trying to engage the community. Right. And something that we haven't really done, backdoor types of things, training librarians, making pediatricians aware, making preschool teachers, daycare workers, nannies, anyone who works with children before they start school should understand what works. Right. And so that's a goal of ours, and I'm proud to be on the board of that. And I think what she did is phenomenal to start that, and I'm very excited about that type of work. So don't forget about Teach My Kid to Read.
No, they're a very important organization. I'm so glad that you brought them up. We're very supportive of what they're doing. And one day soon, I know I'm going to crack the Houston library system if it kills me.
You will. You'll break them down. You'll wear them down.
I will, slowly. Yeah. I'm persistent. I'm tenacious.
I know you are. But getting those decodable books available to people. So again, I don't want to just throw out a word that nobody means, but decodable books are different from the level books that they generally get in school. There are some districts, kudos to them, they're looking to make a change, but it's not happening fast enough. And so libraries are going to have to step in and have that available, where it's these books that match what they are learning in phonics, to make those books available to people, because children are not getting the practice that they need. They're learning phonics and then they're being thrown into books where they don't have to use those skills. So what good is it?
Right.
So it's this whole understanding that we have to change at the tier 1 level. Gen Ed.
Well, and with that, I think that we should close, because I think that we could keep going and going and going.
Well, thank you for having me.
Faith, I love you to death. I'm so grateful that you were willing to join us today. So thank you so much. This is going to be so helpful for parents. I'm confident of that.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much. And we'll talk again.
We definitely will.
All right, great. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.